Okay, ratios and proportions. Okay, let's zoom in here a little bit. Okay, for ratios and proportions, this should be an algebra review. What you need to remember is that a ratio is just, it's a fraction. It's a comparison of two quantities. So if you were comparing two items, there are 8 boys to every 3 girls. Okay, that is a ratio. Excuse me. A proportion, by definition, is 2 equal ratios. So you know that 1/2 equals 4/8. This is a ratio. This is a ratio. But when you put it all together, this whole thing is a proportion. There are a lot of characteristics of proportions. So if we look at, well, the 1/2 equals 4/8. The great thing about proportions is the properties of it. So I can switch, if you will, these two numbers, and I would end up with 1/4 equals 2/8. Isn't that also true? I could switch these two if I want, and have 8/2 would equal 4/1. Isn't that still true? So the properties of proportions is you can change places diagonally. There's also something called the property of proportions that you should have learned in algebra, is that if you multiply diagonally, a lot of teachers call this cross products. You can also call it the product of the means equals the product of the extremes. If I were to multiply diagonally, 4 times 2, that should equal 1 times 8. And 8 would equal 8. So it is a proportion. We can also use ratios when we are talking about missing side lengths. For example, with perimeter. You should know that the definition of perimeter is the distance around the outside of an object and with that would be the fence in a yard, for example. It would be if you have a house and you are walking around the house, you would be going around the perimeter of it. If you have, for example, a figure and you have sides of 3x, 5x, and 6x, and I tell you that the perimeter equals 98. So if I look at this triangle, I should be able to add up the 3 sides and it should equal 98. So 3x plus 5x plus 6x should equal 98. 8x plus another 6 gives me 14x equals 98. Then we divide both sides by 14 and you get x to equal 7. That means that x is 7. That does not mean that your side is 7. So you would have to go back in, plug it back in. So 5 times your 7 would mean that this would have a length of 35. 6 times 7, this would be a length of 42. And 3 times 7 would be a length of 21. So that's one way of using it with perimeter. So let's do a couple examples. Number 1, this should be an algebra review. Solve the proportion of 3 over 8 equals 5 over x. Cross multiply, 8 times 5 gives me 40 equals 3 times x gives me 3x. Divide both sides by 3 and x equals 40 thirds. It does not reduce. Don't panic. This is a perfectly good value for me. If you want to convert it to a mixed number, you would either use your calculator and convert it or do the division and get 13 and 1/3. Those are perfectly, both of them are perfectly good values. Let's go on to another one. A little bit more algebra involved. So y plus 3 over 12 equals 5 over 6. You're still doing the cross products. 12 times 5 gives you 60 equals, if you do the cross products this way, it's all of this times that. So we would recognize that as the distributive property. 60 equals 6y plus 18. Subtract 18 on both sides and get 42 equals 6y. Divide both sides by 6, so y would equal 7. Okay, so let's see how we do on the homework assignments for tomorrow when we start class.